Hello, Sieve fans, and welcome to today's Firaxis Livestream.
So my name is Pete Murray. I'm going to be your moderator today, and I am joined as usual by Carl Harrison from Firaxis QA, our intrepid driver. Carl, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Pete. Thank you.
And we've got Brian Felges with us today. Brian is the designer who worked on the Monopolies and Corporations mode for the Vietnam and Kublai Khan DLC. So Brian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Pete.
So just a reminder to everybody, we're going to be showing off the DLC that's going to be available tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and I believe 5 p.m. British Standard Time. So we've got a bunch of stuff to show off for you today, and 2 civilizations and a cool new game mode. Carl, what are we going to be looking at today?
Sure, let's go ahead and get into the game here. We're going to be taking a look at 2 different saves today. One is Vietnam, and one is Kublai Khan playing as China. Kublai Khan can lead 2 different civilizations, China and Mongolia, and we'll be playing China today. But first is Vietnam. This is Lady Trieu. She is a very different civ because she can only place her districts on top of features, which we'll take a look at here in a minute. We're starting in medieval era because that's when her unique unit, the Voi Chien, elephant crossbowman, is available, and so we're gonna be building that unit and trying to do a little bit of warring with it today.
Okay, very cool. So take us into this game and show us what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vietnam has a very strong start bias for features, and those are rainforest, woods, and marsh tiles. And that's because, like I was saying, that's where she has to put her district. She cannot put districts down anywhere else. In fact, I have production available here in my THO right now, and a bunch of districts available. Let's go ahead and place a campus here, and we can see that I cannot place this campus on these empty tiles, only where there are features displayed. This is where I want to put it because we've got this amazing geothermal fissure here along with the mountains. I'm putting it on top of woods, and that is going to give the buildings that I build in that district additional culture. Vietnam gets additional science on buildings in districts if the district is on top of rainforest, culture if it's on woods, and production if it's on marsh tiles.
All right. I noticed there's a lot going on right now near your main cities, and looks like we've got some new things going on and some pretty good yields going on. So, Brian, tell us about how this new game mode works.
Okay, so today we're talking about, obviously, the Monopolies and Corporations game mode. That's kind of the abridged title. I should call it the Industries, Corporations, and Monopolies game mode. Because there's an additional industry component to it as well. But essentially, what this allows you to do is improve luxury resources that are within your territory, and you're allowed to build industries around those resources. So it looks like Carl has 2, maybe even 3 of them going right now.
So, Carl, you've got some cool research.
You wanted to talk about those?
Let's talk about that silk industry that's in Tan Long there. So, Brian, tell us about how an industry works.
Okay, so one of the first requirements you need in order to create an industry is you need to have completed the currency technology. Obviously, in this particular save, Carl's already completed that, and that basically unlocks your ability to create industries. Industries are improvements. They are tile improvements, and they're built the same way as any tile improvement would be, just using a builder charge. But in order to have an industry, you have to control. And when I say control, you have to actually have that resource in your civilization, like in your territory, and you have to have it improved. So you have to control at least 2 of a luxury resource, with one caveat, of course. We also count resources that are owned by cities, or that are controlled by city-states that you may be suzerain of. But you need to own at least one of those resources. So we do count resources from suzerain city-states, but mostly it's about controlling those resources within your territory. So Carl just showed that he was controlling at least 2 of that silk resource. It allows him to build a silk industry. And if he would mouse over the silk industry icon there, it tells us that it's giving us a plus 20% culture yield in the host city. So by host city means the city in which the industry resides. So that city now is getting a 20% culture yield boost for all the culture generated in that city.
So am I allowed to stack industries in a city? Can I have like 3 industries situated in a city if I just happen to have a really good distribution of luxury resources?
No, actually not. You're only allowed to have one industry of a specific type in per city. So you kind of have to think about how you want to spread these around. Obviously, I said you have to have 2 of the resource and at least 2 of the resource improved in order to build one. So you can kind of sometimes you can pick and choose. If you have the resources that are in different cities, you can choose where you want that industry to be.
All right. So that spice resource that's near Tan Long, Carl, you actually moved that around, so that's under control of another city, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That is under the control of my Tho down here, and you do have to pick and choose what industry you want in your cities, since you can only have one. So I did have a bunch of different resources in Tanglong, just like you were saying, and that's spices, silk, and olives. And I had to choose what I wanted to have as an industry there. And the industries have a variety of different effects. So what we've seen here are plus 20% culture yield in the host city, and that was both on silk and spices. And then olives is plus 30% production towards civilian units in the host city. And I've paired that over here with Tra Q because that's where I have Liang, who gives builders an additional build charge. So that's a really good combination to have there. That also would have been a good choice for Tanglong because I do have the Ancestral Hall building in my government plaza, so I would be getting an additional bonus towards building settlers in this city, but I really wanted to get that culture bonus. Down here in this city, there weren't any other luxury resources within range except for this tea, but that's where I'm going to be putting this settler, so we'll own that tile. And I did want to have an industry here, so I went ahead and swapped the spices over. But you can have some really interesting decision-making processes when playing with this game mode, trying to figure out what industries to put in which cities, and try to plan around those kinds of bonuses.
That's correct. I mean, while there is a bit of, the random map generation obviously is going to affect a lot of these things. And the effect that you get from the industry is, of course, based on the type of resource that the industry is built around. So there's, like I said, there's a little bit of chance involved here when you first start a map, but you do have a lot of options down the line for getting industry effects throughout your empire that we'll talk a little later.
So I got a couple of questions from chat that have come in. One of them from Zephyr is, if you improve with an industry, do you still have the option to trade away the copies of that luxury resource?
That's an excellent question. Yes, you do. So you only need to control the resource, the 2 resources in order to create the industry, but that does not restrict you from trading them away. You are still considered to have those within your civilization, and you can create an industry around them.
Okay, we got a question from Sarah, which might actually have 2 parts to it. She says, can 2 civs have corporations of the same resource? Corporations are separate. We'll get to that in a minute, Sarah, and you'll see how that works. But 2 civilizations can have industries of the same resource, correct? So I could have a spices industry in one of my cities, and somebody else could have a spices industry, correct?
That's correct. As long as they control 2 of the spices and you're controlling 2, then both you and that other civ could have industries in there. However, corporations are exclusive to a degree, and we'll get more on that later when we start talking about corporations. Okay.
So, Carl, it looks like there's a bunch of stuff happening in the world as well, too. It looks like you've got Mongolia, in this case led by Kublai Khan, who we'll touch on later on, moving some forces around. And I've noticed you're shifting some military units up to your borders there. What do you got in the works?
So yeah, Kublai Khan has declared war on this city-state down here, who I am suzerain of, and I do want to try to come to their defense. They're doing actually a pretty good job because they do have walls up, and he only has warriors. He did not upgrade these units before moving them down. He probably started the operation against them before he had finished the tech. I am moving my units into features, and that's because, again, woods and rainforest, and that's because of the other part of Vietnam's ability is drive out the aggressors, which gives me additional combat strength and movement when I am in featured terrain. It is important to note that combat occurs in the tile where the combat or where the unit is defending. So if I am attacking this warrior, for example, they are in marsh, and so I would get that bonus. But if this warrior were here on this cattle tile, which has no feature on it, I would not get a combat bonus if I was attacking with a melee or a ranged unit into that tile, because the combat occurs where the unit is defending. But if I am defending with a ranged unit, or if I'm attacking into one of those tiles, I would get that bonus. And the movement bonus is where the unit starts. So these archers and these swordsmen are all going to get +2 movement, because the bonus is doubled if you are within your own territory when they start their turn. So we'll be able to go right out of the gate. We're going to get the Void Chen first and upgrade all of these units, and then we'll start attacking.
Okay, so I got another quick trailing question on industries for you, Brian. First one, somebody's asking, can you build industries on sea resources? Yes.
Yes, you can. But of course, yes, you can build them on sea resources just like anything else. However, when we get to talking about monopolies later on, it's a little more difficult with sea resources to gain an actual monopoly control, because the accounts of the resources, the distribution of them is well over the map, as opposed to land luxury resources, which tend to be regionalized the way we generate maps.
Okay, and another question is, what happens to my industry if I lose control of my second copy of the luxury resource?
So that's a little bit of a that's kind of a gimme that we give to players. You really only need the 2 to unlock the industry in order to get the benefit. And of course, if an enemy comes in and takes the city that has the industry, of course, that industry's, they could pillage that industry. That industry can become theirs. So you do have to control it to an extent, but of course, just because you temporarily lost a resource, during a war or something like that, doesn't mean you're going to lose your industry.
Okay, so Carl, you're banking that great merchant right now. You're not having him do his thing, because later on we'll talk about a potential use of great merchants. So keep that in mind.
Yes, those do tie into the game mode that we're talking about.
Okay, got a quick question. What about luxury resources that you can only get from great people or city-states, like cosmetics or cinnamon?
That's an actual that's a very good question as well. You do not get the effect from those. You have to control them in your territory. At least one of them you have to control in your territory. So obviously, if the suzerain has that resource, you get credit for that, but obviously you have to have at least one. So things granted by great people, or luxury resources granted by city-states, they don't really count, because a lot of times the number of nodes on the map is not enough to really consider that to be a monopoly.
Yeah. So sorry you can't build a toy industry to last forever. It's
yep. Sadly, we do exclude toys. Sorry about that.
It's because we're having all the fun. Yeah. So Carl, as you've been playing out Vietnam through the course of testing through this, how does Vietnam play? What's been your kind of take on them?
So Vietnam, I think, is a really strong culture civ. They're actually a great jack of all trades because of the bonus yields that they get for where they put their districts. That actually is pretty versatile. So they can go for a space race game if they want to, pretty easily. The combat bonuses that they get do push them a little bit in a domination direction, but they are way better at defending than they are at attacking. And that's both because of the fact that Drive Out the Aggressors gets doubled if they're within their own territory, but also the unique Thon district, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. I think that their best path, however, is culture. Vietnam gets to plant woods early, and woods is the feature that gives them bonus culture on their districts. So you do get a little bit more culture than the other yield types. But most importantly, I think that you are getting culture from the Thon district. The Thon is their unique district replacement. It's an encampment district. It does not require population. or a district slot. Every single city can build it. It does not go on top of a feature like other specialty districts, like the campus, since it doesn't require a district slot. So you do have to clear the tile that it's on, and units don't get the combat bonuses from drive out the aggressors while occupying this district. But it does get a +2, a major adjacency bonus for every single adjacent district. So right now, this district is getting a +2 from the adjacent campus. I will be putting another district here eventually, which would boost it to a +4. And then later in the game, Vietnam gets tourism equal to the culture bonus of the encampment. So you could surround this encampment with districts and get a really high culture bonus, and then later in the game a tourism bonus without ever having any great works. Obviously, we have those too, and they really help. But that is an option and a path that you could take.
Very cool.
One other thing I'd like to point out, I think the people might want to see some of the other benefits and stuff that you can get from industry. So if you wanted to maybe take a look at that report screen.
The Civilopedia?
No. Yes, the Civilopedia. Sorry. Yeah, correct.
Oh, this is always risky. All right, go ahead.
Oh, I know.
So for those of you who like taking screenshots during our live streams, this would be a good one to grab. So Brian, this shows all of the bonuses that we can get through luxury resources turned into industries.
Correct. This is a list of all the luxuries that you can create industries around and the effects that they grant the host city.
All right. Somebody wants to know, what happens if I capture a city with an industry in it? Do I gain control of that industry?
You get that industry, yes.
Oh. And Carl, I've been told that the specialty district is pronounced Tong. So just so we get our pronunciation straight, I'd like to thank everybody who corrected us on that. So you've just completed machinery, and that unlocks the Voichen.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and do some upgrading here. We have the mercenaries policy equipped in order to make the upgrade cost 50% cheaper, so we'll be able to do all of these units at once. This is a crossbowman replacement that has additional movement, additional sight, additional defense, but it costs more to help compensate for that.
Still, once you have them, they're just a juggernaut.
Elephant units are always cool anyway, and this one is really awesome. Although the upgrading is a little bit pricey.
I am 3 gold shy, actually, of being able to do all of them.
There's no way you can't pawn something real quick and
yeah,
just get that
I
last
probably
unit.
Let's Let's go ahead and get it from Kublai Khan himself. Let's see, for 50 gold.
This is so dirty.
Oh, this is bad.
He wants my spices. This deal will end the moment that I declare war on him, but it is enough to give me this upgrade.
Oh man, Carl, you play dirty. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to be great to set a deal with you here.
I never trust Carl when I play a game.
It's Carl uses war as just another tool of statecraft. He's a real politique kind of guy. So it was funny when we were testing, or when we were practicing the other day, we were talking about all of the cool elephant units that are in Civ, and we were sort of ranking them. Salty Squids wants to know, do the Voichen make that elephant sound effect?
They do, yes.
Awesome. So, Carl, you were saying this is maybe your favorite elephant unit so far, although getting them up against the Varu, that was also turning out to be fairly interesting as well.
Yeah, there we go. Declare war.
There we go.
Yeah, the Varu are an amazing unit, don't get me wrong, but I think the Voichen are my favorite elephant unit just because they have so much on them. Crossbowmen are already really strong. They could really turn the tide of a game once you unlock them, and they're particularly good at offense, but the Voichen is particularly good at, or is also, not instead of, but also very good at defense. plus they have additional movement, plus they have additional sight. They also move after, can still move after attacking. So let me go ahead and move this guy up. I will not be getting combat bonuses here from Drive Out the Aggressors because the defending unit is not in a feature tile, but I did still get all that free movement from starting my turn in a feature in my terrain.
So from a defensive standpoint, they're amazing.
They're incredible, yeah.
You can basically push, but I mean, you're actually using this for an attack in this case. So I'm not sure you're driving out the aggressors here. I think you are the aggressor.
I am
right,
the
Carl?
aggressor. Yes, that's correct.
He's driving forth as the aggressor. It's like Drive Out the Aggressor, but a little different. This is crazy. I mean, watching these elephants sort of blitz out and still be able to move at the end of the turn, so
that's
you can sort of maintain
the
a battle
other big
line.
thing is that I can still move after the fact, so you really capitalize on all that free bonus movement that you get. And I'm getting a movement boost from Great Generals here, so it's even more than it would otherwise be. There's just so much the Void Shen offers, and that's not including Drive Out the Aggressors. So, you know, if they're defending in their own territory, they get all of that, all of their inherent bonuses, and then the double bonus for Drive Out the Aggressors. It's just so powerful. So these guys are a force to be reckoned with on defense for sure. If you are attacking Vietnam, I do not recommend doing so during medieval while they have their unique unit up and running. It's just painful to do. And then again, because correct me on the pronunciation again. Tong district does not require a district slot. Pretty much every single city is going to have one at some point. And I don't have them in every single city now just because I've been building other things, but they will have them eventually because there's no restriction on building it. So going up against a Sieve that has a huge defensive bonus, a huge movement bonus in their own territory, and then an encampment everywhere is just really quite painful.
Well, people have a couple of questions that I want to make sure that we get in real quick.
Well,
first of all,
before you get to those questions, I'm going to go ahead and start loading up the next save, and we'll answer those during that process, because it looks like we're winning this quite thoroughly here. And now that we've gotten to see the Void Shen unit in action, I think it's time to move on to some Kublai Khan.
And some amazing economic action. So we'll draw a veil over Kublai Khan here, and we'll pick him back up later on. The questions I've got for Brian are: somebody's asking, are industries just straight upgrades? Yeah, they're pretty strong, but they're really more than just an upgrade. They're kind of a specialized addition, right?
Yeah, that's correct. While they do, like any other improvement, they do have base yields, but they are basically, yeah, in a sense, you're kind of upgrading, but you're using a build charge. You already have to have an improvement there, so you already have to have that tile improved. So you've already used a charge there, but you used another build charge to basically, you know, it swaps that improvement with the industry improvement, and then it's the industry improvement that grants those additional effects that we profiled earlier.
Gotcha. I got a couple of other questions here. I'm pulling up. Does Kublai Khan's Eureka for each Civ? Does Kublai Khan get a Eureka for each Civ city, or once per Civ? Period.
It's once per Civ, and that is major Civs only. City-states do not count for that.
Okay. And then a question for you, Brian. Are you allowed to swap industry tiles between cities after the industry has been built, assuming the city you're swapping to doesn't already have an industry? Ooh.
You know what? I actually have not tried that, but I do know that you can't swap an industry tile into a city that already has an industry. It will not let you do that.
I do not believe you can. I believe it's like a wonder. Once you've built the industry, the tile cannot be swapped.
Okay. And we've actually just addressed a follow-up question was, does Kublai get his bonus Eurekas from city-states? And the answer is no. Sorry about that.
There's actually a really interesting strategy for how to use his Eurekas and inspirations. Let me go ahead and get back into the game here so that people can see the leader screen here, this is Kublai Khan as China. And what we're talking about is Gerege, one extra economic policy slot in any government that's really, really strong. It was the last policy slot that we had not added it as a civ or leader ability. So we were saving it for a civ that it really fit for, and Kublai Khan with the Silk Road seemed like a really great match. But he also gets Eurekas and inspirations when establishing a trading post in another civilization city for the first time. Again, that's major civs only, and it's once per civ, not once per city. But you can save trading with some of the civilizations until much later in the game, so that you're getting even more science and culture out of those Eurekas and inspirations. Trade with your immediate neighbors and with city-states early on, and then get those big boosts for much higher free numbers later in the game, particularly when some of the boosts that are available are only through scientists or through stealing with a spy. You can still boost those Eurekas through this ability.
And it's nice to see him in his China outfit. He gets a change of clothes when he leads China versus when he leads Mongolia. So our team did a great job with that. But let's go ahead and let's jump in and take a look at a later game. So we are ruling the world through money. Carl, tell us about what we got going on right now.
So we are one turn away from Renaissance, or excuse me, Industrial Era, end of Renaissance here. We are also one turn away from unlocking the economics tech, which will give us the ability to found corporations. Brian, would you tell us a little bit about how those work?
Brian?
I'm sorry. Excuse me, I forgot I was on push to talk. So bear with me. Okay, so corporations are like industries in that they are an improvement, but they are an upgrade of an industry. And what corporations in a nutshell do is they double the effect that they double the industry effect for that particular resource. So for example, if you have a tea resource and it's giving you plus 15, plus 15% science bonus. If you build the T corporation, you get a plus 30 science bonus. So,
all right. Well, hopefully we will be able to see some of the cool things that you can do with the corporations as we play through here. So, looks like you're doing pretty well. There's some good yields coming out of some of those tiles there.
Yeah, I've got a really great wall here, and we're building another one down here and around this city here. But I do have a couple of other culture yields on the map, and that is from our new district, the Preserve. Let me come up to this one so there's not a unit on top of it. The Preserve district is brand new with this DLC. It is a specialty district, so it does require population and a district slot in order to place down. It cannot be built adjacent to the city center, just like the encampment. It can be built adjacent to other districts, so you can put other things next to it. You just don't really want to, because then you lose some of these yields. It boosts the appeal of adjacent tiles by 1. And then when you build some, it also adds some housing. And then when you build the buildings in it, you get additional yields based on the appeal of the tile. So with the Grove building, I am getting food, culture, and faith on the tiles if they are breathtaking, and a little bit less faith and no culture if the tile is just charming. The tile also has to be unimproved, and the reason that we've added this is to boost national park gameplay. Primarily because national parks are a really great resource later in the game. They provide a ton of tourism. They provide amenities to the city that that owns them. But those tiles also cannot be improved. So you are sacrificing some yields in order to get those national parks up and running. We wanted to recognize the fact that that is a little bit of a sacrifice and add some fun toys in the toolbox for ways to play around that. And so this district will allow you to increase those yields. We're about to unlock conservation as well, and that will give us the sanctuary building, which is the second and final building for this district, and we'll see what that does once we have progressed a little further here.
Okay, sounds good. So what industries do we have in Beijing right now?
We have a tea industry in Beijing, and now that we have progressed the turn and unlocked economics, let me go ahead and turn that into a tea corporation. I do have a great merchant camped on this tile, ready to go. You do need a great merchant in order to create a corporation. You can see that there's this new action here on him. This is Marcus Licinius Crassus, who is a very early great merchant. It does not matter what era the merchant is from. Any great merchant can be used to create a corporation. I saved him in case I wanted to use him. I ended up not, so we're going to go ahead and have him turn this into a corporation. I will not be able to use his normal ability by creating a corporation with him. It does consume the great person entirely, and you lose out on any normal benefits that they would have.
But you still have the option to choose either or. So you just because you get a great merchant does not mean that when you have this game mode enabled that the only thing that the great merchant can do as a retire ability is to create a corporation. So you can kind of pick and choose how you want to do it, but that is kind of one of the requirements that we have, is that you have to have a great merchant instead of just a simple builder charge. So obviously there's a little more of an investment here. You're using up a great merchant, but the effects are very powerful, as I'll talk about next. So in addition to getting twice the yield that you normally would get from an industry, you also have the ability to create products. And products are created by... Okay, so go ahead, Pete.
No. I was going to say, I did want to point out that you could name the corporations, that there's a random name generator as well, too. Although I firmly believe that you should do... I firmly believe you should take the first name the RNG gives you, because that tells you, it predicts your future. It's your destiny. So, okay.
Right, Pete.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Let's talk about what you can do with the corporations.
Okay. So now that Carl has founded this T corporation in Beijing, he has the ability to create a product, and that's created through a city project. It requires production. And products are very similar, or handled in the game very similar to the way we handle great works. So he's going to show that off now. So Beijing has a stock exchange. And so the stock exchange building now, as well as the seaport building, has the ability to have 3 slots to hold products in. So you do have to have a little bit of economic gameplay in order to get that 3rd tier commercial hub building, in order to house your products. But it's basically like you don't only just create a product, you actually bring it to market. And bringing it to market, and him slotting that product once it's finished, will grant the industry effect. So the product actually grants the industry effect into the city in which it resides, in which it's slotted in, whether it be a stock exchange or a seaport.
The difference being you can't slot it in at the city where the industry is already situated to stack the effect.
Correct. Yeah, we kind of handle that redundancy. It simulates that the people of that city already have that product because the corporation exists there. They already have access to it.
And
so
all the tea they need is already there.
Exactly. So other cities don't necessarily have that tea product. So when you give it to them, that's when they enjoy the bonus.
Okay, got a couple of questions from chat for you, Brian. For merchants with multiple charges, does creating a corporation require all of the charges, or just whatever's left on the great person?
No, we thought we'd be real friendly there. That would be a common strategy, is you could kind of use up its charges, but before using up its last charge, before retiring that great merchant, you could use it to create a corporation. So you're still able to do those things. We thought that would be too restrictive, kind of a newbie trap, like people going, darn it, why did I use that charge? Now I wanted to make it, use it to make a corporation. You don't have to worry about that. As long as you have a great merchant that's still alive and on your map, you can use it to create a corporation.
That's very generous of you guys. Somebody wants to know if there are any negatives to having corporations like there were in Civilization 4.
No, there aren't any negatives really that I see. They're mostly seen as like a power up. Of course, as I was kind of saying earlier, there's a little bit of the random map generation that's going to determine what kind of corporations you're able to have in your cities and things like that. And also you have to decide where you want to put it. Because the corporation is an upgrade of an industry, there's a little bit of planning ahead that you kind of have to do. So that could be a drawback, as it's not as flexible. You can't necessarily move your corporation all over the place. because it has to upgrade from an existing industry, et cetera. So there's a little bit of restrictions there. But for the most part, they provide these awesome bonuses to power up your cities.
All right. Got an additional question. Can you trade products once you've produced them between other civilizations, like other great works?
Yes, you can.
And it does impart that that industry effect to that civilization. So be aware if you're doing that.
If that product if they can slap that product in one of their cities, then that city will be granted that effect. Yes.
Yep.
That is
okay.
That is particularly fun to play with in teams, because you can give your products to your teammates' major cities in order to boost those.
That's I didn't think about it for team play. That's pretty good. I was just thinking, how much value could I extract out of other players in the game for the different resources for the different products I had created. That's pretty cool. And then somebody's asking, so I know this was mentioned earlier, but how are sea resource corporations different from land-based luxury resource corporations? And I guess it's in terms of what they yield, right? And actually, let's take a minute. We'll put that yield chart back up there for you guys who didn't see it. Carl, if you get a chance, pull that up from the Civilopedia. So if we look at, for example, Wales, which is second from the bottom, that's going to give you 30% production towards military units. Now, there is a land resource that also gives you that production towards military units as well, too.
Right. Citrus, cotton. Yep. Ivory. So, yeah, those all. There's no huge differences between, ocean, land products and sea products, other than there's a lot more of the ocean nodes. The resource nodes on land tend to be regionalized, where the ones in the oceans are generally all spread out. So that's kind of a difference there. It's a little bit easier to get those in some cases, and unless you're landlocked, of course. But if you're landlocked, you have a lot more resources, or all the land resources at your disposal.
Yeah, the biggest difference between land and sea is being able to monopolize the resource. And I think that is a really great transition to take a look at where we can see the information about how to monopolize. Right here, the last button in the upper right corner is list of reports. And if you click that, there's a whole bunch of reports here that are really good resources for you. The last one is global resources. And if you click that, you can bring up a list of the resources in the world. And when you unlock mercantilism, which is a civic, you get additional information on this screen, which we can see here, about how many nodes there are on the map and what % control you have of them. So we can see, for example, that there are only 2 nodes of marble in the world. And again, this has not come online until mercantilism, but now that I have discovered it, I can see that. And we can see that Vietnam has one of those 2, and therefore a 50% control. That is not considered a monopoly. You have to have at least 51% of the nodes to have a monopoly. Down here, we can see that I own 3 out of 3 spices, and it does say monopoly. And I have 7 out of 8 ivory, which is giving me a monopoly. And we'll talk about what monopolies do here in just a minute. There are a few interesting points on this screen. Brian was saying that in order to create a corporation, you have to have 3 nodes on the map. Industry is 2 nodes, corporation is 3 nodes, but Marble here only has 2 nodes available. We do take that into consideration. If you have both nodes of Marble, you are still able to make a corporation, even though you do not have a 3rd node that is waived in the case of fewer than 3. And then this one here, we can see that I have 0 out of 2 for diamonds, but it is still considering me as owning diamonds. That's because I used a great merchant that copies a resource on the map and gives me that copy. So I do own a diamond resource personally, but it is not a map-based node, and therefore it does not count towards monopoly control, and I cannot use it to create an industry. You have to have map nodes for that.
That's correct. And thanks for pointing those two details out. And also that global resources screen, we actually put that in, I believe, in XP2, but it was recently we actually backported it to base game and XP1 because it's important to note here that this game mode works in any version, any rule set of the game, whether you're just playing the base game, whether you're playing the expansion, first expansion or second expansion. It works in any of those game modes, and we wanted to make sure that we included that UI in there so that people could see how close they were to gaining a monopoly or how much of a monopoly control they have on a particular resource.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us what monopolies do, Brian?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Carl. Let's see. So monopolies, other than creating industries and corporations, it's also important to control a certain amount of a resource. And as we've, as we know through history, that when you have a monopoly on a resource, you kind of have the ability to make more money out of it potentially because the demand of it is higher. Other companies or other nations might not have that resource, and so it's going to be much more valuable in that case. And so you're going to get some benefits from holding monopoly on resources. So as Carl said before, once you gain a monopoly, you get both a gold reward from holding monopoly, but you also get a tourism reward from holding monopoly. So first off, is holding monopoly on a luxury resource grants tourism, and that's based on the number of the resources controlled multiplied by the number of foreign civilizations that do not control an instance of the monopolized resource. So we're sort of simulating the fact that I have a monopoly on it. These guys don't even own any of it. So therefore, they want that luxury. They want it bad. So that's going to sort of improve our standing in the eyes of other civilizations. So that's going to give us a tourism boost, which is good. Also, holding monopoly on a luxury resource grants +5 gold per turn. Once you hold the monopoly, you get +10 if you hold a 75% or more monopoly, and you get +25 if you hold a 100% monopoly. But that's not all as far as the gold is concerned. It also grants an additional +5 gold per turn from each major civilization that you're currently trading with.
And all of that is on top of just the straight up gold bonus for owning the monopoly of it.
Exactly. So you get this base amount, which is +5, +10, or +25, but you also get +5 for every major civ that you're currently trading with.
Not per trade route, just in general.
Right. Not per trade route, per civ.
Here we go. We have our first product built.
Okay, so show us how this works. And actually, somebody's asked, can you steal products the way that you steal great works?
You cannot. I do not believe.
Sorry.
They go in a different building type. They go in the stock exchange or the seaport, and steal great works is still only on the theater square. So you cannot steal a product. You can trade for them though, and purchase them from people. So here we see that I have my tea product in the stock exchange in Beijing. If we mouse over this, we can see what it's giving us. Because this is a science industry, science corporation, we are getting 3 science and 1 tourism per turn from this product. The products themselves are not particularly tourism heavy, but that's partly because if you have a corporation, you might be on your way towards a monopoly, and you do get a significant boost from that. And then we can see that this is giving me plus 15% science yield in the host city. Well, the host city currently is Beijing, and Beijing is the city with the corporation. These do not stack, which we mentioned earlier, so I do not benefit at all from keeping this product in Beijing. I want to move it. So if I look at Shenyang here, we can see that I am currently getting a total of a 5% boost from modifiers on my science. If I move this to Shenyang, I'm now getting plus 15% science there, and we can see that has gone up to 20%.
That is a pretty cool bonus there. So a couple questions have sort of percolated through while we've been talking. Can spies pillage corporations or industries?
If it's allowed to be pillaged in the game, it can be pillaged, in which case it will not grant you its effect until it's repaired.
Awesome. Somebody's pointed out something interesting, which is from the Heroes and Legends mode, if I were to use a Nancy on an opposing Civ's tile with a Monopoly, will it destroy that Monopoly? That's an interesting question, but it is a good example of how the different modes stack together. So you can use this in conjunction with the Heroes and Legends or the Dramatic Ages mode as well. Do you know the answer to that one? That's
I
a
do,
little bit of
yeah.
tricky.
So if that is the only node of that resource in the world, then yes, it will destroy that monopoly, obviously, because there's no more resources of that. If, let's say, they have exactly 51% control, and you are using it to remove that 51% control, then it will remove their monopoly because they no longer control 50%. Anansi can be used to make gaining a monopoly easier as well by removing a node that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. That ivory resource that I do not have is right here, and if I had Anansi, I could move him down and remove this ivory, and that would give me 100% control. Maui is also a very interesting hero in this mode because you can use him to place a single, obviously it's random, you don't have control over it, but he can place just one copy of a luxury resource on the map, which would then give you immediate monopolization over it, which is a huge bonus starting that early in the game. So there's some kind of crazy combinations that you can end up here.
But corporations are, they're a delicate balancing act. So you can actually lose control of the corporation that governs a particular resource, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if another player is able to have gain more of those resources than you have, then you can actually take over. So if they're gradually losing their resources, if they lose if they control less than 3 and you control at least 3 or more, then you can actually steal that corporation away from them. You can basically, it's kind of like a takeover. And so you have a corporation, a new one, they lose theirs.
And that, again, you would need to create the corporation for it using your Great Merchant, correct?
I believe so, correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so we've just created an Ivory Corporation now, too. That is pretty awesome. So we're rolling along here.
I do want to revisit that preserve over here because we do have the sanctuary available. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens when I build that. So the sanctuary building.
Good, because we got some questions about sanctuary. So
Okay,
after you
excellent.
build it, let's go ahead.
The sanctuary we can see here, it grants science and gold to unimproved charming tiles, and science, gold, and production, more science and gold, and then also production to unimproved breathtaking tiles. Again, these do have to be unimproved tiles. Let me go ahead and purchase that, and we can see that has added all of those yields to these tiles here. So this is a really great area for me right now. This is meant to be used in conjunction again with national parks, but there are a couple of civilizations that also really capitalize on the preserve more than others. Bulbu's Teddy is one, Canada, Maori. But also Inca. Keep in mind that Inca are able to work mountain tiles. They get inherent production on mountain tiles, and building terrace farms adjacent to mountains adds food to them. If you put a preserve adjacent to mountain tiles, it does add these yields to those tiles. So Inca is very strong with this district. It's also worth noting that this district can stack. So if I were to have 2 preserves adjacent to each other, say one here and this one, these 2 tiles would duplicate those benefits. So it would be 4 science, 4 culture, 4 faith, etc.
Pretty nice. So got a couple of questions. Let me back up and pull them up real quick. He said, scrolling through his notes. Do you have to build preserves on the woods, or can they be built on other kinds of tiles?
If you are playing as Vietnam, they have to be placed on top of a feature because they are a specialty district, and Vietnam specialty districts must go on a feature. For everybody else, they will clear the tile that is there. So if you are placing it on top of woods, it will remove those woods.
Okay. And can preserves be part of national parks? And the answer is no, because they count as an improved tile, correct?
Well, they count as a district, and you cannot have districts inside national parks. But you can put national parks adjacent to them and are encouraged to do so. But they cannot be inside of a national park. So here we go. This is naturalist that I have here. Obviously, this demonstrates what we were just talking about. It does not select these tiles here because this includes the district. I can only place this adjacent to the preserve, and there we go. We have a national park. And we can see that those yields did not change because they are still unimproved tiles.
But it is pretty cool that you can do things like place preserves so that there are overlapping effects of them. And, you know, I didn't think about playing the Inca and placing things so that I could improve my mountain tiles, but that is pretty impressive. That's a pretty solid way to play, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do, and we expect to see some really cool things from the community with those kinds of civs in the weeks after this is released.
Got one more question for you, Carl, about Vietnam. In the Vietnam first look video, rainforest and marsh tiles were shown to be floodable. Do they actually flood now?
They do not. What was happening in the first look there, I believe, may have been some tricks with camera work for the sake of the video, but we do not have rainforest on floodplains.
Okay. And then do ley lines within national parks boost preserve yields? That's a good question.
No. So the yields from the preserve come from the buildings. That's not an adjacency bonus on the district itself. It's actually really interesting. When we were developing this district, I was talking with David Raby, who was the one who designed this, and we were going over what kinds of things we could see a new district doing. And one of those was basically an inverse adjacency. Most districts gain yield from other things being adjacent. So the campus gains science from being adjacent to mountains. And when we were talking about it, we said, well, what about a district that gives adjacency rather than gaining it? So that's where this idea sort of comes from. Is this is a district that rather than adding adjacency to itself, gives adjacency to other things in the form of these yields on these tiles.
Gotcha. Carl, does Vietnam's tongue reduce the appeal in the surrounding tiles?
I believe so. Yes, it does. It's still an encampment district.
People want to know if you can culture bomb industries if they're right on the border. Can you do that?
You can, yes. I believe if your city already has an industry, it will remove that tile improvement. I want to say, I could be wrong about that, but...
So yeah, like tile annexing, it kind of follows the same rules as any other tile. So when we evaluate, when you get a new possession, it's like, is that we have, checks that say, is this civilization allowed to have this? And if you're not allowed to have that industry, then that would not transfer to you.
Okay. All right. Well, this is just a look at this mode, and just as a reminder, this is a game mode. This is compatible with the other game modes that we've put out. So just like everything else in the New Frontier Pass this year, these can add on to your existing gameplay. You can choose which ones go into play at any given time. And also, this release that's coming out tomorrow does have Vietnam and Kublai Khan in it. So this is one of our two civilization packs, or in this case, one civilization and a double leader for you. Just as a reminder, this will be available at noon Eastern tomorrow. That's 9 a.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. British Standard Time. We've been playing today, most recently, as Kublai Khan, trying to rule the world through economics, and it looks like we've got everybody lining up to get our spicy sauces and our ivory, our all-natural billiard balls. So you are actually coming pretty close to a culture victory.
Yes, we
pretty
are.
fast. Yeah, you're well on your way for that. So thank you for joining us. Our driver today and our intrepid guide, as usual, has been Carl Harrison from Firaxis QA team. Thank you very much, Carl.
It's been my pleasure being here, Pete.
And from the design team, we've had Brian Felges, the designer of the Monopolies and Corporations mode. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
And I've been your host, Pete Murray. I've been happy to be here with you today. Stay tuned to our social media feeds for more information about the new Frontier Pass and upcoming updates for Sid Meier's Civilization 6. Everyone have a great day.